are gonna listen to it,
Okay.
because I feel like surveillance is, if they want to hear something, they got it. We can't
Yeah,
protect
and
ourselves.
I
It's
don't have
all
a
out there.
problem. Yeah, and I don't have a problem with people listening because they listen to the full context, so they don't take things out of context. But
Yes.
I understand.
But if we get to a point where something feels like we need to pause the recording, let's do. But I
Okay,
appreciate and want to get on record here on the recording. You're
right.
saying what y'all were thinking there in the Fresno branches, those of y'all who are women of color or possibly Black
Mhm,
women, you're saying
mhm,
when they look at this Black Lives Matter, do they really know
mhm.
what that means?
Right, and it wasn't even so much of the branches because we have the one or two, that's there. So we didn't make a difference really in what we thought. But the thing was, we were not the ones that had the Black Lives Matter signs outside of our buildings and outside of our places of worship. We saw a lot of white folks doing that, even would have gatherings on the sidewalk of where their places of gatherings were, and they would have the signs up, and it was like a rally or a protest, whatever that looked like, but they had the signs of Black Lives Matters, and there were not an awful lot of Black folks out there with them. Very few, in fact, was out there. And so that led a question that was raised in one of our WILF meetings as to, what does it mean to you as predominantly white folks? What does it mean when you see Black Lives Matters? Even a few of our Hispanic sisters, what does it mean when you're saying Black Lives Matters? What does that mean to you? And they seem to have an understanding of what Black Lives Matters with from a textbook perspective, from what they heard in the media, but nothing beyond what you hadn't read in the media and what chit-chatting was about. And so that's when I felt led, and I always use the word spirit. So I felt led in my spirit to really unpack this thing, because we were unpacking it in the communities of color. The Black community behind closed doors was having these heavy duty conversations about what do we need to do and who else is going to show up in the media. And this seems to be taking place in different cities where our brothers are being shot, our sisters are being shot. What do we need to do? So we needed to have a strategy as to, who do we call? Who's on first? Who's on second? If something happens, who do we call? And we have a brother by the name of Reverend Floyd Harris, which he has recently joined WILF, and he's our historian that talks a lot. He has a history of transitions of Blacks, what we've gone through. And plus we needed to show that we had a front with not just the sisters, but the brothers and the sisters working together. And so we kind of had a plan of action that if something happens in our city, who's on first, who's on second. But outside of that, we really, wasn't sure where these groups that was doing peace work, where they were at. They said they were allies, and they really meant it. We would be in protest, and they would go in front of the line. They would stop traffic, and they would be the ones in front. If there seemed to have been a harassment of sorts that would take place with the police, they would stand in line up in front of us. And that was not the first that we'd seen that. So we knew that from their actions, they wanted to be allies. And while we didn't have them in all of our meetings, in our planning sessions, we knew that at a drop of a hat, they would come out and they would support. So here I was belonging to an organization called WILF, and they were all talking about Black Lives Matters and was out in some of these gatherings. So that's when the question came up: what does Black life mean to you? And we would have statements like, well, Black life matters because all life matters. And we're saying that we get that, but we're not asking about all lives matter. We're saying, what does Black life matter mean to you? What's your statement? And I think that's when we started having different statements, and they all were okay. But, it wasn't something that was just rolling off the top of their tongues. And this is when I said to myself, and then later to my colleague, Reverend Harris, later on, I said, join me in this. I don't want to be in this conversation by myself. I need you to join in with me, and let's continue to co-facilitate this process, because I wasn't sure how long it was going to be. And so that's when we started talking about unpacking racism. During that process, a lot of the women our white sisters were reading books, all these books that came out, Peggy McIntosh, a whole bunch of the books, as we would get various book clubs. And they were reading that. And so when we would get together in our meetings, we really didn't have much time in our business meetings to unpack or discuss racism. So I suggested, why not have a group, and let's call that Unpacking Racism, because that's what it feels like we're doing right now, to unpack it. And then, see what we come up with. And I was using the word very loosely, let's discover our own blind spots. And that began to be the piece that began to take shape. The Unpacking Racism, that was okay in a way, because they were repeating what they had read in books and interpreting what was read in the books. And we have kind of somewhat of an intellectual group, because many of the women are retired from teaching K through 12 and post-secondary ed. Some have worked in social work. They come from a background, various backgrounds, so they can have an intellectual conversation if so desired. But I didn't want this to be an intellectual conversation. So I decided that we're not going to do the book. You have a book, read your books you have your meetings that you're going to, and you're reading those books, and that's good. And even a few times, ladies, I would go to the meetings with them, but it seemed like when I was there, they didn't seem like they knew how to, what would be the word? They weren't comfortable in their skin in speaking about what the book was saying. Like there was one time they were taught, one of the books talked about, what was the right name to call Black people? Was it colored? Was it Negroes? Whatever book it was they were reading. I was the only Black woman there. And they was going to ask me what was the name. I said, wait. No, I came in just to kind of listen. I said, I think this is your work to do. Mm-hmm. So my mind says, you don't need to be in that book club, Jean. Let them do the work themselves. Give them the space and the privacy. Let them find the words themselves. And then let them bring what they need to bring back to the once a month meeting that we have, which is the Unpacking Racism. And in doing that, they may discover their own blind spots. And so that's where we are at this point. And I have been trying to write an article at least once a month, if I can, on some of the conversations we have, but maybe even an aha moment, even my own aha moments. I just finished writing a little piece a few days ago, which will come out in the May article. We have a Community Alliance paper that all the various support social justice groups write articles in, and Wolf buys a page. And so we have a page to do whatever we want. And I found myself talking about white privilege and how that while we are trying to develop generational wealth for our community as Black people, white people have already have developed their own generational wealth. Their kids are benefiting from what happened back in slavery. And I just kind of talked about that, a few 800 words maybe in the paper. So it is that sort of a thing that I'm doing in the writing for those who don't want to show up to the meeting. We just started recording the meetings as well. We weren't doing that before, but again, whatever the reasons are, some people may show up, some people do not. But I've also made a very public statement. I've said, if only one person shows up to that meeting, we're going to have our meeting. So then that way, if they're uncomfortable, that's okay. They can still go back and listen to the recording. They can also read what I write in the article and comment on that if they so desire. But we're going to continue to unpack this until we are comfortable in going into spaces where they may be the only white person, as we have gone to spaces where we have been the only Black people. So that is kind of how that has been. It's very grassroots. It's intentionally grassroots. It is about speaking and also developing relationships, not just because we come to the group once a month and chit chat, but that we can really build relationships, and whatever that looks like, they will come to the rescue of that. So it may not necessarily be things to do with us. We've had a couple of people come in as guest speakers. That has been an aha moment as they began to realize, whoa, you're talking about our fire department? And you're talking about for years, they didn't have any Black people. And then the few Black folks that they had in there, they were treated which way? So that was the ha-ha moment of the fire department saying, when it's breast cancer month, we have a shirt that supports breast cancer month. When it's Pride month, we have a t-shirt that supports Pride month. But when it's African American month, we don't have any t-shirts, and we don't understand why. What a ha-ha moment. So now when we hear that, what is Wolf going to do about that? Because you just heard something. That should open up your blind spot. What do you think we need to do? And so in a way, I am using their white privilege because they can go into places that I can't go. But because they can open up those doors, we can then also come up with a plan of action as to how do we want to represent? What do we need to bring that to the service? What do we need to do on that? And one of the things that's come out of that is that we have supporting the idea of the senior Black firefighters to really be the covering for the younger Black firefighters, so that they don't have to go through some of the things that the senior ones went through. Even some that had to do we had one gentleman that had to do a civil suit, and it became a federal suit. And his settlement in that was to make sure they hire Black cadets, make sure that they hire Black firefighters. And without that suit, they would just hire, anything meets the quota of a minority, right? It can be your age, it can be your sexual orientation, your religious orientation. It doesn't have to be a person of color. At least that's the way we use it in California. And so you can have a place that looks a certain way and there's not one Black person there, but they meet the minority quota because of the ageism, sexism, whatever ism that is there. And so it is a concerted effort that we're using when we say, understand your blind spot, because your blind spot may not be my blind spot, but that blind spot you have may be what's holding up the progress that needs. So that's the reason why I haven't put any curriculum to that. That's the reason why I have not taken a book and says we're going to use this. I'm not opposed to them bringing something in and working on an exercise. I think those are structured and those are important, but I am really trying to peel off, because for so long, our women have been in the place when there were discrimination going on. They have been there, they've been on the front line. But you're not going to walk around tapping yourself on the back saying that you understand Black Lives Matters, and you really don't understand what Black Lives Matters. You're using a term and it's a hip term, but do you really understand what Black Lives Matters mean? So I am thinking that what would be the outcome measurement? Maybe by the end of the year, we can say we've done 1 or 2 or 3 projects, or we've been involved with certain groups that ordinarily we would not be involved in, and feeling more and more comfortable. Let me say this, and then I'll turn over to you. California is an interesting place. I think we're more of a state of Blacks that are more middle class than most other places. And so when you see Black people, we're doing well for ourselves considering how some of the other states are. So we have this false sense of security. We get paid well, we have our nice government jobs, but we don't always have the representation of Blacks in those positions. We only have the one Black mayor, forget his name just as I was talking, many years ago, one and only. And so we don't do very well in repeating of Blacks in positions. And, we have a city council here, and we don't have one Black person that's on the city council. So we realize that while we're middle class and while we live a certain lifestyle, we're not in positions of power, and so because they have other groups that they can, to fill the gap. So I have said, myself and Brother Harris, we've said if they can get it right with us on how to unpack racism, they won't have a problem when the Latinos come knocking at their door, because they will. And they're going to say, what about us? We want a conversation going on. And when our brothers out of the Pride movement comes in and says, wait a bit now, we need also to have some conversation on gender equity or whatever the intersection is. If they can get it right with us in Fresno and anywhere else that's doing this work, then they'll get it right with the other groups. So that's the passion. That's where you see that all coming from.
Thanks, Dr. Jean. That is a lot. And I'm a slow processor of information. I take it in and my brain does things and then I make sense. When I react right away, as I'm about to do now, it's not always well synthesized or whatever it is that things do in your brain.
Okay.
But what part of my reaction is, I'm hearing that, is I hope that we as a team over time come up with some agreements about approach and, what are some of the baseline things we want everyone to get? Because I'm about to share a couple of those from my perspective. I don't think I'm the gospel around this, so I can definitely learn, but based on my experience, what works. Part of a hesitation I have when you talk about all of our blind spots is, in my experience doing work with white folks, especially in the beginning of this work, they are seeking, I know there's a phrase for it, and I can't remember it. They're seeking a way out of their discomfort. And, so that has developed over time for me. One of the caveats I give them right from the beginning: you are not going to feel comfortable. And there's no expectation that you should feel comfortable, because this is not comfortable. I don't say it like that, hopefully, but that's the reality. And any discomfort you feel does not mitigate the chronic racism I have to deal with, or sexism, or whatever, every freaking day, every moment. So shut up about not being comfortable. That's probably my own stuff. But it's so not feeling comfortable and not being fixed right away. Because, another expectation white folks often have in the beginning is that they're going to be perfect. And there's no way. For the rest of their life, as much as they need to be conscious about privilege, oppression, racism, other isms, they also need to be conscious that they're not going to get it right, like ever. Like none of us ever get everything right. And that's something they, need to learn. Also, that it's important that race is that central issue that people learn about undoing, unpacking, overcoming, dismantling, whatever is the operative verb that means we are dealing with systemic issues. One of those is the very definition of race, because in the same way, Dr. Jean, that some folks will say, well, we all have our blind spots, they can also say, well, we're all racist in our own way. No. Race is about prejudice plus power. And you need white skin in this country to have the power to be racist. So I can be biased and prejudiced against Latino folks or Asian folks or Muslim folks, but I can't be racist ever. And that's one of the bottom line ones that I'm like firm on, not rigid. I do not think that I'm rigid on anything, but that's like bottom line. No, we don't do that. And I still will remember an argument I had with a Latino man in Arizona, Tempe, Arizona, who just swore he could be racist and was really angry with me that I told him he couldn't be. It was hilarious. So anyway, that's my share for now. And I do hope that in our next team Zoom, with Nikki being here, hopefully, and I know Teresa wants to be there because we're talking strategy and content in some ways. When we look at the strategy chart and say, based on these ally branches, based on the relationships we have, what's the way we begin with these folks? How do we get things moving? Ashley put some suggestions in the chat already, but I'm hearing from you a lot of the relationship building part of it. And asking questions, having people ask questions of themselves, like, on your own,
All right.
Black Lives Matter mean? And that, when I'm working with interns these days, I ask them to journal because they do that, the younger people. I don't know if you older people do it, but journaling about what Black Lives Matter means would be an awesome thing to do. And no one ever has to see what you journal but yourself. So those kind of things could be very nice.
So let me also mention this, that once my colleague joined me, Reverend Floyd Harris, and he's known in the community.
And you said he joined Will?
Yes, he's joined Will. He's been in relationship with Will for many, many, many years. The moment we hear or see something on our email that says he's calling people to support him in a protest or march or whatever, they're right there. So they've known him. Many of them have been part of what he is termed as mentoring him in his younger days of whatever that was. They know him. And then it dawned on me after I met Brother Philip, I thought, wait a bit, he's a male and he's part of Wolf. Then wait just a second, I've seen some white men around Wolf, but it never dawned on me to get some of our Black men in there. And the first person that came to my mind was Harris, because we feel that he's our covering in many areas. And so in asking him to help co-facilitate his role, I do the touchy fuzzy stuff, if you want to call it that. But his role then is to do what I call the 101. He does the educational piece. He goes into places that captivates their attention. When he breaks it down about Black Wall Street, and go into details, when he talks about the Black Panthers and what happened with that and so many other areas, it just seems like he just knows how to tie that together in what he does. And the next time we have a meeting, I think I should invite him so that at least he can, be part of what it is that we're talking about.
There's a Black Liberation Caucus meeting on Sunday.
Okay, yes. And I know
and that would be a good place.
Sundays is bad for our time because the time difference, I think we're still in service at 1 o'clock.
So he's just barely getting out of church at 1 o'clock.
Barely, might even be at that moment preaching because he starts at like an 11:30 service or something. But if you record that, you can, but I think it's good to be in there. But if we have one of these conversations that we're doing, it would be good to hear him because like I said, I go right where the touch thing is when someone says I'm a certain way because I have grandchildren who are of mixed race or they've adopted someone. I can deal with all of that stuff, but when he gets into let me tell you about the system, let me tell you about those laws that you have had on the books, let me tell you how these situation puts us as Black people at risk or in danger, that's a whole nother conversation, which they cannot deny that it is what it is. It's no longer touchy fuzzy because my grandchild is Black or biracial, or I've adopted a child, or, my mother when I was younger, used to take me over to the Black side of town and we used to volunteer. All of that's great. But when he says, okay, now we've had that part of the kumbaya, now let's talk about the real deal. And so when we end with that, and it's a challenge for all of us because it's easy to say something, then you listen to it. And that sometimes it's uncomfortable for them to even want to come back. Somebody may say, oh, something came up, I'm not able to, attend. And that's okay. And that's why we've said, even if it's one person. So, because we're dealing, our population, I think I'm still trying to unpack, and I don't want to do it tonight here, but I'm still having to unpack or even struggle with the idea that Wolf is a white supremacy group. I don't accept that. And that's just me. And maybe I've just put the noose around my neck and stood out from the group. I believe we are a white privilege group. And that's what we deal with in our group. I don't see us as a white supremacy group. When we put the litmus test up to that, they don't pass the white supremacy test. Maybe in the South, maybe there's something going on in the South that would say when you put the litmus test up, you get the checkoff marks and all the boxes get checked. That's not
Dr. Jean, part of that is about power. Where is the power and where is the money? So when you look at wealth, is there a lot of power in the control of Black women? Are Black women in control of the financial resources? Those are some of the metrics to determine what white supremacy looks like.
And I think that when you look at when we came on board, for whatever the reasons, when we came on board, looking at that timeline to the existence of wealth, I know that what can I say? I know that the messaging depends on who's doing the messaging, can sound a certain way. I get more. We learn more from the white privilege end, because in white privilege, I think we can take more mileage on that. And that's what we're using for our group. As a matter of fact, I have said to my group, I'm not part of a white supremacist group. And so if you guys who are white say you are, then we're gonna have to just do this whole thing different. You need to be telling me why you're a white supremacist group. You need to let me know, why have I been paying my dues to you all these years, and you're a white supremacist group? White privilege, I get that. And I understand the white privilege. Many of the women in our group are, because again, of the positions that they've held in their own lives, who they've been married to, the resources that they've had around, the clout that they may carry, who they're belonging to, their last names, a lot of them. But they've also learned over the years, at least while I've been with them, to take that same privilege and get some doors of opportunity open for other people that we ordinarily would not have been able to do that. But if they've used their name, their finances, all of those things. And so we're at a different place, and I am pushing back on white supremacy. So at the end of the
Well,
day,
you were
all might say,
describing there what I call strategic use of privilege, which
yeah.
I don't feel this way now, I don't think. But there was a time in my life where, because of strategic use of privilege, was like the only thing that kept me from feeling homicidal towards white people, frankly, when I was younger. And that's because I had relationships with people who would strategically use their white privilege to keep me from going off. For a while, every time I went to Boston and I had to shop at a place called Bread and Circus, and I had a white ally go with me to the store to keep me from grabbing white people by the throat. I ain't even kidding. Because that's how obscenely white rape, whatever they were. You know, they had an attitude about my being from the South, my being a big fat Black woman. Oh my God, it was just too much. And it made me so angry. I couldn't even get through a shopping trip for groceries. But if she came, it was cool. I said, you better deal with that one right there. You better, and then she'd run interference. But you know, over time, I developed my own ability to deal. I could probably go to Boston by myself now and handle Bread and Circus, Whole Foods, all that crap. I've noticed, Ashley, you haven't said much in the last 40 minutes. Any things you want to add based on what you've heard us say?
No, I'm just listening. I'm thinking just the best way to approach it is from a curriculum or toolkit standpoint, just because a lot of this is going to also vary from branch to branch.
It is.
And so I think incorporating what Dr. Jean was mentioning, Nikki's work, the stuff I was talking about with using kind of an art therapy approach to unpacking some of those different subconscious and unconscious behaviors and identifying them, along with journaling and painting and also music therapy. I think creating something like that and getting that into our personal branches and then hopefully being able to expand that would be the best way, at least that I'm seeing. Because I'm just thinking about my branch personally. I have someone who's in charge who is masking their true feelings about people of color very well, but as a person of color from the South,
see it, right?
Right, like, come on.
Yeah, it's so easy to see.
Right, and that's like at least 4 people out of my branch. So that type of work from my branch, but then on the other side of that, there's like 3 or 4 people who are like hardcore allies and who are interested in doing this work. Right, so
you're good.
But it is a split, you know, and it's going to be pulling those other people along in similar ways that Dr. Jean was mentioning. And then hopefully the implementation of the toolkit or the curriculum or whatever we're going to call it will stick and have more of a lasting effect. Because what I'm thinking is that we really have to create these allies as kind of sleeper agents, so to speak.
Oh, yeah,
We need to teach them, educate them, transform them so that they will go ahead and do the work
yes,
with their own
with
folks.
their own folks over time and consistently. Otherwise, it's like a new skill. If you don't practice it, it goes away.
Right.
Especially if
It's a
you're being
perishable
constantly
skill. Yeah.
bombarded with racist messages all the dang time.
All day. Right.
It's a
So
lot.
those are just my thoughts in terms of what I think would be good for us to do and how to kind of implement that. And it is going to have to be a part of the 3-year plan because I don't foresee this moving faster than that.
Yeah, it does take a while. I think we could set, not us, not the three of us tonight, and probably not in our next team meeting, but the one after that. It's hard for me to envision a lot these days, but I can envision a process around this. And part of it is next time we get together, we'll start looking at the strategy chart based on who we know in those branches, what is a good starting place. And yes, we'll have a toolkit or a curriculum or whatever works. But we also, I know from the last board meeting, I think you were there, Ashley. I don't know if you were at the January board meeting, Dr. Jean. I think it was no, wait a minute. March board, was it March? There's a board meeting next month. Yes, the board meeting was in February. But at that board meeting, they made a decision to hire Keisho Scott from Grinnell College in Iowa to do a assessment of where the organization WILF is around race. I know Professor Scott, she's pretty awesome. She, but I also know that an assessment of the branches is important. Not the, the organization overall, that's great. But if we're going to be doing work, and we are going to be doing work with individual branches, that means those, you have to have a baseline of where is that individual branch starting from. Based on where they're starting from, it can help us decide what of the toolkit or what of the curriculum needs to be included. So that's the only thing I have to add.
So are we going to do this alongside WILF, or we are going to do something different and interject it into WILF? What is the which freeway are we taking? Are we all going to go down the same freeway?
I'll tell you what I'm thinking right now.
As long as we end up wherever we end up.
But whatever I say right now may not be the final answer, because there's democracy and there's just three of us, and there is at least Nikki's voice to hear in this. And I know as the strategist behind the strategy chart, Teresa will want to look at some of that. But what I think we're doing is we're working from the place of the Black Liberation Caucus. We're working to implement what's in our 3-year strategy chart, which has been shared. It's not a secret. We've talked about the BLC. We've talked about our work to transform WILF from an organization where white privilege rooted in white supremacy is in operation to one where there's true sharing of power with people that are not white and leaders that are not white in every case. So what that looks like is we're doing it with the branches that say yes, and we have allies in those branches. Ashley mentioned allies in the Triangle Branch. I imagine the Triangle Branch might be one of the pilot places where we're doing this art process or beginning this art process. And it is a long-term process. It's not a one-shot deal, but it is a long-term process where one of the goals is that the people there are continuing the work. Yes, we get them started with whatever we decide that looks like. Is it a series of the kind of stuff you've been doing, Dr. Jean, once a month? Is it something that's every other month? Is it something that's a few times a year? I have no idea about that. But some consistent unlearning and learning process that moves eventually from those of us who are delivering it as a training piece where that branch is covering the expenses of it happening, to something where that branch holds it and maintains and sustains that core learning for the branch so that it is an anti-racism branch.
So I don't quite know how to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I need to be able to mark the dates and time in my head when I said it. I've been with Wolf for quite some while. I've not always been active in the role that I'm in right now, but I've always been able to go in and out of Wolf if there's a project that needs to happen. And I know that it, you know, I can go to these groups of women and say, hey, we're doing this. Can you support what we're doing? Or I've got some students that I'd like them to get some exposure to social justice work or whatever it might be. And if they can bring our groups in or give us a platform there, they will do that. So I've built a relationship with this organization over the years. And I don't use the same lens that is used from the South. I don't profess to do that. I have just recently, thank God for my opportunity to be retired so I can live in more places than once longer than I need to so that I can get a feel. And I spend some time in Georgia. I have family there, so it makes it easy. And I do see things that are different there than it is in, not just in California, but even in Fresno. Fresno is a totally different place, even when you talk about California. So we operate very different here in California, in Fresno, California, than you would in the Bay Area. Even where Brother Philip is at, he's going to operate different there than he would in Fresno. And so there's a uniqueness about Fresno too, in terms of how we manage our day-to-day, how we deal with racism, how we deal with privilege. All of these things come into play. So I am not, how can I say this? I'm being very careful to not find myself in an organization, which is in an organization that's trying to take over another organization. I can only say it the best way I know how. And maybe I say it tonight so nobody pulls the plug on me. I'm also very aware of leadership, and I don't like bullying leadership either. What you're hearing from me is my organizational psychology background. It has to be a win-win. We have to learn how to get along, and this has nothing to do with who has degrees and who doesn't, who has training, who doesn't. It's just about how we treat one another. So I am uncomfortable in places where I feel like I'm hearing an organization is coming in and they're going to take over, as it were. Can we all learn from one another? Yes. Can we be civil with one another? Yes. But if it is a plan to say we're all going to come in and put the wagons around this organization and then we're going to attack, and then if we have to take over, we will. If that's what it is, let me know up front so I can make that decision to say, okay, well, let me listen to what you all got to say some more and let's go with that. Or you know what, that's not a good fit for me. So I don't know what I have said just now, recorded or paraphrased it or whatever that is, but that's where I am at. And I'm very uncomfortable with the conversations of, and I just already said about white supremacy, but I go to the South and they talk about white supremacy. So I'm a student, I'm willing to learn and listen and see where you're coming from with that. But the other piece is I'm not into organizations coming in different ways, and then they're there for a few years and then they burn out and they're gone and things are left upside down. Maybe that is our experience we have in the Central Valley. Maybe that is the experience we have in California. And so I speak from that. Maybe you don't have that where you're at, but I'm not into that sort of.
Is your concern that the anti-racism training might be something that's going in for a while and trying to take over a branch?
More so, I'm more concerned about the Black Liberation Caucus owning the anti-racist training, and it's up underneath the Black Caucus. And so then the Black Caucus comes in and makes its way through, and the next thing you know, it's kind of like that becomes a covering of the organization of Wolf existing, as opposed to it being another branch of information, and it's just a stream that you can go to them for the anti-racist training or anything in that area, as opposed to them being the covering suddenly over Wolf. Okay. Because that is the conversation. When I read those emails, it sounds as if we think Wolf doesn't have any good sense and their leadership doesn't have any good sense. And I don't feel comfortable with that kind of behavior and bullying. And Sister Teresa, who's our elder. So let me just call her name. And so I would expect different from it now if that's her style. Because when I first came into the group, I kept saying, okay, I get people get upset. We have people that get upset in our meetings, but there's somebody there to check them or someone to say, wait. And it's dealt with. So, but I've not seen that. I've when I first came in with it and would even hear you, George, you would speak and Sister Teresa would come over you, talk over you, and you allowed that. And I thought, well, who checks Sister Teresa if she's out of line? Who's going to check Jean if she's out of line, or whoever? And so I don't want to be in another hierarchy thing. Am I even making sense?
No hierarchy. I'm with you there.
And I need to say that, and maybe just to, don't twist it what I'm saying back.
You said your
in that,
words
but-
in your own language. Nobody's
Yeah,
trying to twist it,
yeah.
You're very clear.
I would support Black Liberation Caucus. I think that Sister Teresa makes good points. What got my attention, and I ran back to my group with it, and I said, wait up. I said, there are some things that we have not been talking about that impacts us as Black people: reparations, the prison system. And I had that list, and I says, I've just joined this organization. And I says, and I like the way they spell it out, and we're going to incorporate these things into what we're doing. And I said, and the sister is right, for us to be in this organization so long and have not gone out and invited other Black people, that does say something. We're a little bit too comfortable. So we are going to do that. And that's why when I got Brother Harris, and I says, hey, I need you in this organization. The work you're doing out there is fine, but I need you to be part of this. And I showed him those strategies that we said we were going to do. And it all makes sense to do that. But then I cannot explain clearly what role, what is this, what is this?
You muted yourself, Dr. Jean, but you also probably have to.
What is that thing? And then I don't know that we have any safety nets. If Teresa doesn't like something, it just gets shut down. Or if you don't like it, would it get shut down? Do we all have same equal voices? So I'm like sitting back and just kind of watching that. And I don't know that I'm comfortable with that piece. And I'm a woman of, I'm a Black woman.
Made decisions by consensus. And, no one rules. We don't have a king or a queen. And I do think there's space for all voices. And part of coming up with good decisions is having principled struggle. And sometimes that struggle is passionate and loud and can feel rude. Ashley, I know you've had your hand up for a minute. And I appreciate everything you're saying, Dr. Jean. I also hope that can be done in about not more than 12 to 20 minutes. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yes, it's really quick. So BLC needs to have group agreements, organizational, like a handbook for how the committee is going to run. And there does need to be a conflict resolution process as well as a restorative justice process that needed to be happening at the same time that BLC was formed. That way that everybody within the group has the understanding of what the group norms are, what our purpose is, and what is expected. Just to be very frank and brief, Dr. Jean, I am originally from Houston, Texas. I grew up in Cary, North Carolina. Cary is a very wealthy, old money, racist town. I remember seeing the Klan in 92, 93, and 94 as a child meeting in downtown Cary. There are drugstores that you still, in 2022, do not go into because they are racist and they will not fill your prescription. And this is 2022 if you're a person of color. So my experience here has been shaped literally by the environment and all of those holdovers of white supremacy that took root way back before any of us were even here, right? What we find though, is that it's less overt and it's more covert, but that's still just as poisonous. So when I'm explaining what microaggressions are to certain members of my branch, I'll get an eye roll. They'll cut their camera off. They'll just walk away. they won't even acknowledge that I'm explaining something to them that is true, that has been researched and is based in fact, but because they, here in the South, that's just normal. The good old days where white people are better and they make all the rules, and if you're a person of color, you have no say and you get nothing. That is still prevalent because a lot of the people here are older people, and it's harder to change that mindset. And for people to really recognize that that's what they're doing and even acknowledge it. So here, our problem is really with acknowledgement, because these things are happening. And one of the things that you find in the South is we love to be politely racist. And what I mean is, no one's going to say it to your face, but then all of a sudden you're removed from an email list, or all of a sudden the executive board is having a meeting about you, or executive board members are reaching out to members of other organizations not connected to WILF to find out information about you in order to dissuade other people from working with you or supporting things like BLC. So you have this unfortunate, nefarious undertone of things that are actually happening, and they're maybe more seen over here because the mentality over here and in the South especially has those real, that nasty, white supremacist tinge that is very hard to erase from our history. So within the branches down here, our lens is a little bit different. And I do understand that's why Teresa has a militant perspective, because of the time when she came up with activism and what she had to face, which was horrific, right? However, I agree that there, as a leader, you cannot get anything done if people don't want to hear your message. And oftentimes there's a way to say things that will not shut people down completely, but will get the message across. And unfortunately, that is being conflated with personal ad hominem attacks and people getting angry and people getting shut down. And that is, I agree with Dr. Jean, that makes me hesitant, because how are we going to do this work if within the organization itself, we don't have a system set up to protect each other from any sort of negative behavior, as well as to reinforce us as a group against the things that are unfortunately happening by some of the white counterparts who are in positions of power within the organization. So for me personally, it feels like fighting on multiple fronts, which you can't get anything done away. So I think for sure, establishing those things for BLC so that people who are also maybe on the fence about coming and participating have a clearer understanding of this is how the group is going to run. Because yes, we've operated by consensus, but let's just keep it a hot 3000. If Teresa shuts it down, it's done.
That's
if Teresa
right.
doesn't like it, it's
That's
done.
right.
I
That's
will not
right.
speak up in a meeting because I don't want her having backlash at me. I upset her and I didn't
That's
even know until my name ended up in an email. And then that was a whole thing. And then I was removed from the board of SARN. But then she
Right.
wants me back to work with SARN. Like, we cannot have this back and forth from someone in leadership, and we can't do the work we need to do if those norms are not established. And if she does not agree to follow by those things, this is in no way an attack. This is in no way disrespectful, but it is very challenging for me to feel comfortable in a space where this work has to get done when the person I'm supposed to be following can flip on me in a dime and say some very challenging and horrible things to me if things are not done in the way that they like. So I think in order for us to get this work done, that has to be cleared up.
Yeah.
For sure. And BLC needs to have some more structure, not saying we need to get into all the bureaucracy, but the fact of the matter is we're all from different walks of life. We have different experience. Our levels of activism are different. I'm not a Black Panther activist. Yes, I'll go hard, but my approach to things is always, let's talk about it. And then if you keep pushing me, you'll find out the other way, but we're going to talk about it and we're going to have a conversation and we're going to try to work together before we even get to that point. And it doesn't seem like that is the same agreement with everyone. And we need to make sure that that is strong even before we go into this transformative work, because we have to be strong with each other before this work will be strong within WILF. So I don't want to keep taking time, but that's just kind of my thoughts. And where
I think it's valuable time. This is the best time, because I think we'll do a lot of things on the clock. And then this piece that to me is very real, we'll cut it off
Right.
and go for another day. And I think this is important, George, that you hear this and if you know how to articulate it back, because that is the way I feel. I feel that if Teresa says finish, it's finished. And we're in the middle of the stream. And because she feels like if she sees it a certain way, she's our elder, she's got all that experience, that's good to go. But I have been on meetings where Teresa pulled the plug because she did not like the way the other lady was speaking or whatever that is. And I said to myself, that would be me. And then I have to say, what would I do if Teresa did that to you? I shouldn't be having all that conversation, because I have to deal with my white people in that respect. So I shouldn't have to feel a certain way amongst our own. Now, I know that culture, I know that ageism, I know that different places where we're from is going to have some input in that, but there has to be those basic safety nets that my sister just spoke about, so that we know, so that it is all right to disagree without feeling that the plug is going to be pulled or your name's going to appear in somebody's email or whatever. So, you know, that's the my name and Philip's name appeared in one email early, and it was a good thing. It actually was a wake-up call, because Teresa said, I don't understand how we can have Black people in Wilf and they're comfortable being there, being the only Black people there. And I got to tell you, that was a ha-ha moment for me, because I had become comfortable. They were good to us. It wasn't just me. If I said we want to go over here to this group of Black folks, they would come. But when she said that, I thought, wait a bit, this sister has a good point. And so that started resonating within me. Why I didn't even have an Unpacking Racism before that. But that was part of what motivated me, because I thought, doggone it, if I'm going to bring Black people into this organization, there's some work this organization has to do before
That's
I
right.
bring those folks in. And then they're going to be like, Dr. Jean, what the heck is this? I was insulted.
Yep.
So she was the one that got me on this pathway to do the Unpacking Racism and Understand Your Blind Spot. Believe it or not, it was that memo that got me motivated. And then I had to cook the dinner the way they eat it, because everybody cooks differently. And so I'm preparing my group that hopefully after this year's work, we'll be open to say, yeah, come on in. It don't matter who you are, you know, how you identify, we're ready for you, so that we will have more than the 2 Black people. We'll have several, but it's going to be a safe space for them, so that they don't feel like if they open up their mouth, someone's going to shut them down, or they're going to see their name in an email or something. So that part of our leadership in BLC has to be taken care of. Otherwise, it's hard to associate with that, because you're guilty by association. And I am not that kind of person. I don't write and send things out and cut people down that way. You know, I don't take advantage of my senior status, you know, in that regard. So that is some of the things that's bothering me. And this sister said quite a bit about the structure part of it. I would like to see that, because if we're going to do this heavy lifting, we've got to make sure we've got each other's back. And I'll be doggone if memos start going out and different people's names are showing up in there because, you know, our sister doesn't like the way it was said, or somebody
Right.
said something, or you or whoever. I don't want to get into that habit, because if she can do that, anybody else can get in an email and send it out. And that's not where we're supposed to be at this point. We need
Well,
all hands on deck.
I'm really glad, you know, I said earlier, I was reluctant about recording this, but now the recording's here. You've spoken in your own words. No one can twist those. But one of the things you said, Dr. Jean, was in terms of how you've approached the work at your branch is you had to cook the food the way they like it.
Yes.
And one of the things, you know, I don't try to speak for anybody else. My love and respect and commitment and loyalty to Teresa is deeper than I can say. But she cooks the meal the way she likes it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you can't say, Teresa, I don't agree with that. That is the struggle. That is the political struggle that she can handle. And she can handle it and still be in loving, good relationship with you. I can't say what it looks like exactly for anybody other than myself, but I know that she does not shy away from a real conversation if and when you disagree with something that she said. You just have to say it. And creating a structure like you've described, Ashley, I'm not excited about a handbook, but we have our basis of political agreement for the Black Liberation Caucus. Maybe there's some similar set of, you know, that's not our political agreement, but our something agreement that looks like.
Like our group agreement or organizational agreement, because that is separate from, we should all be politically aligned, but not everyone has the same idea about working style. And saying it raggedy and, you know, giving people
Right.
grace and space. Like these are things that not everybody knows how to do or are familiar with. And I do think that's going to give people more comfort um, and more security that there is something at least there. Because again, I get not wanting to do all the bureaucracy, but we got to have something.
No, I'm
It's
not
like the
saying
Wild
have
West.
nothing. I just don't know. At the moment, I can't come up with a recommendation of what that form is. I can remember, and I still have this in my computer archives. In 2006 and 2007, I did have the honor of working on the US Social Forum with brilliant activists, exponentially more brilliant than I could ever be from all over the country. And I still remember many of them. And we came up with something called the We Believe Statement. And it's awesome. It's both political agreements and how we individually conduct ourselves with each other. It's really long, but it was one of the first times in my life I felt like, I'm supposed to be here. This is right. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Of course, I'm like, 37 at that point, pretty late in life to figure it all out or to get close to figuring it out. I still haven't figured it out. I'm 62. At any rate, I want to be able to support the concept of how do we create agreements with how we are with each other. That's one of the things I want us to have in this team working on the art is how do we work with each other given our different perspectives. You know, I don't know if white supremacy is just rooted in the South, Dr. Jean. It's rooted in the world, frankly.
Yeah.
And capitalism and colonialism and greed and all of them. It's an evil thing.
Well, you know, I say because down the street, just blocks down the street, used to be a headquarters for the Klan. They used to come over to our university. So we know what that feels like around here. So when I
crazy.
say, yeah, so when I say we're being told that we're a white supremacist group, the first thing we do is we go back to what we knew in Fresno and we do a check mark. And we said, then how in the world can someone who doesn't live here, who doesn't understand, can say that we are a white supremacist organization? So then we go back to Wolf and says, are you in fact a white supremacist organization? Because if you are, we withdraw our membership right now, and we will not have other Black people put themselves at risk or in danger for a white supremacist organization. That's what it sounds like when it's being said. So for us in Fresno, we have to be very careful. I worked at the university when we had the white supremacists in our group, on our premises, and we were told, watch the mail you get, be careful how you handle yourself, because it was so in our face. So we worked through that part of it. Now, it might have been a lot sophisticated than it was in the South, but nonetheless, we didn't take to that very, very loosely. It was for real. So to now, 2022, have someone who we know, Sister Teresa knows what she's talking about, and you folks are from the South, but to have that saying that Wolf is a white supremacist organization. They have racist leaders and all of that. That suddenly puts us back in a place of, are we going to invite Black people to this organization when we're dealing more than just unpacking racism? It is a white supremacist organization. Why would we tell people to become members of this organization? If they're white privilege, we'll shout it from the mountaintop. But white supremacy? So I don't know if that's supposed to scare people and get them to do certain things. It reminds me of a lady who we hired one time, and she wanted to make sure she got hired. So when we said, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your qualifications and so forth? And she says, oh yes, and by the way, I'm a gay woman. And we thought, and what does that mean? But when it came time to picking out who was the best person for the job, we got stuck in HR in trying to figure out how do we work with this, because she is not the most qualified person, but if we don't give her the job, she's going to say, you guys didn't give it to us because I was a gay woman. So sometimes people put things in a way that ties your hand. And so that's why I'm trying to figure out what is the methodology of BLC, if indeed they are an organization coming up, they've got all the people in place and, we're able to do the work, then let's go for it. But we also have to have some safety nets if we're going to get on this bandwagon. I don't want the person who's running this to also turn around and cut us down when she feels like doing that because she didn't like what was said. And I've been in enough meetings to see Sister Teresa get upset and the meeting's over, or we have to move on to something else. And I don't know either. That's her style. So I have to know. I can only say so much because we're under a time limit and it has to be said. But again, do you use that just to kind of move it to another direction or what? So what are these agreements that we can maybe put together that says it's for everybody? So if someone is offended by what is said, if I've said something or vice versa, we're at least.
We're not going to come up with any agreements tonight because we're about to.
No, not tonight. But I think that needs to be said.
But
Anyway.
I don't think it's a bad idea. And Ashley, you're doing the agenda for the Black Liberation Caucus. I haven't seen an email. I'm pretty sure I sent you the link.
I'm gonna email after we get off the call.
Okay, I'm not trying to drive you crazy. I just was trying to remember, had I done my part? And I did send you the link, so.
Yes,
Trying to make
but I'm
sure.
not sending the agenda out. So I will send out the link and then I'll send out the agenda after you send it to me because I don't actually have a copy of it.
Okay, I'll send it to you when this is
Okay.
over. And you did want people to register or you just wanted the link itself?
Well, whatever you sent me, that's what I'm gonna send out. I think it's one that you do have to
It
register.
is one that you do have to register. We can
Yeah.
change it if you need to, but at the moment.
No, that'll
it
be
is.
fine.
Okay.
No, that'll be fine.
So I have a few comments, Dr. Jean, just so I can remember them. Hopefully they're helpful. Who knows? My brain isn't this good at night. It's not ever really great. But when you were describing the white supremacy thing, your examples were of individuals, not the system. White supremacy, when I talk about white supremacy, I'm talking about systemic racism that is in everything. And, it's ubiquitous and can only be dismantled or overcome or unpacked or weeded because it's going to be there tomorrow too. And it makes sense to have a process to talk about how do we work well with each other. And yes, you are going to be offended and I'm going to be offended. And hell yes, Teresa's going to be offended. In my best working relationships, the agreements that we have are the ones where we stay in it with each other. And staying in it means I know I am absolutely going to screw up, maybe multiple times, but I'm not going anywhere. And as long as you stay with me too, and we're heading to the same place, I ain't gonna leave you at the side. But what do we need from each other to stay in it with each other? And that can be the conversation. I hope it's the conversation we continue to have as a team, because it may get hard and raggedy and rough, and we have to be in it with each other because we need each other to win. All right, so
That was good.
let's set a possible date for a meeting in May. And hopefully Nikki can make it, and we'll share the date with Teresa so she can make it. What's the earliest, Dr. Jean, you can ever meet in an evening? What is your evening?
This here, what time was this? This was 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
Yeah, that was 7 tonight. Yeah, so that's about the latest because physically I can feel the night coming down on me.
So earlier, what would be the earliest?
Early. It varies. I think it's whoever comes in first because there's always some kind of a Zoom meeting. I'm teaching a class or doing something that comes in. So I would say not earlier. I would say not earlier than say 10 in the morning.
Oh, mercy. Okay.
Or else early afternoon onwards.
I remember, help me remember, Nikki. Ashley, Nikki's schedule. Nikki is available after 5 p.m.
Right.
on y'all's time. That's 8 p.m. my time.
Right.
So could you do a 5 p.m., Dr. Jean, or a
Yeah.
5:30?
5 in Pacific time?
Yes, ma'am. 5
Yes.
Pacific time.
George, remember,
Yes,
I have
Yes.
standing from 7 to 10,
What days?
Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
Lord.
so I would have to either be like tonight after,
So
or
you
either
got
before that.
everything, you got something till 10 every night.
Yeah,
And then, and
I-
it's beating up on your brain. So you're coming to us all brain
Mhm.
beat up after classes.
I mean, it'll be fine if the
You are
7
fine. I'm
works.
just messing with you. Because that's
Yeah.
how my brain
But
feels now.
I
After
just
being up
can't
since 9.
do anything earlier than that.
So you can't do earlier than 7 p.m. Pacific.
I can do earlier than 7, but I cannot do. Okay, for my time, I can't do the conversion. Okay, I don't have time.
Don't worry.
I cannot do 7 to 10 Eastern Standard Time. So it would have to be after 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or
Okay.
preferably before 6 Eastern Standard Time.
Which is like 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon, which Nikki
Yes.
can never do.
So I think
Y'all are
probably
at
later
two
would have
ends
to
of
be
each other.
better.
So maybe this is a better time than you think, the 7 or the 6?
Let's just
Maybe
keep it
the
at
What
that.
about a
9.
Saturday?
Ooh, I don't
No,
like
George.
Mm-mm.
No on a Saturday, and I guess no
I
on
need
a
my
Sunday.
weekends. I've got a Zoom every
definitely
day.
I respect that. I'm not trying to be crazy.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
can
I gotta
y'all
make
help
that
me
happen.
figure out an option if Nikki can never do before 8 p.m. Eastern, and Ashley can never do later than 6 p.m. Eastern, what do
Mm.
we do?
No, that's what Dr. Jean was just saying. Let's keep it at this time because that'll work. We would just have to make sure it doesn't go super late so that, people aren't getting too tired.
Okay. So it'll be 7 p.m. Okay, let's pick a day. Look
Yeah.
at your May calendars, women. I'm looking at mine.
Let me see.
I would like something the week of the 16th, if possible. The week of May 16th.
What? I got a line going through that. What's going on? Why is this line?
I can either do the 16th or the 19th.
Okay. So that's Monday or Thursday that you could do.
Or the 20th.
Monday, Thursday, or Friday. How about you, Dr. Jean?
Well, I see a line going through that whole week, and I
Are
don't
you
know
on
what.
vacation? Are you out of town? Is somebody coming to
Or
visit
is it a
you?
conference or something? It's in May, the week of the 16th. Right now, I don't see anything written in there, but I do
there's
see a
tentative
line.
something.
Something
right.
is, yeah, it's got a hold on it.
I'm gonna imagine that tentative something might be over at 7 p.m. at night. We don't know. So
Yeah.
I will go to Nikki with the 16th, the 19th, or the 20th
Okay.
at 7 y'all's time and see what she can do.
1
This will
p.m.
go out tomorrow with the recording. Nothing will go out tonight because I'm trying to go to bed.
So you said Monday or Wednesday
Monday, Thursday, or
Monday, Thursday, or
Friday.
Friday.
or Friday?
Monday, Thursday, or Friday of that week.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll offer those dates to her and see what works.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope this feels like a good start.
It was a
Yeah.
good start. Yeah. I thank you so much, my sister. What is her name? My brain is slipping.
I'm George and Ashley.
I'm
That's who
Ashley.
you're on the-
Ashley, sorry. Yeah, Ashley. Sorry, my dear. I went
No, you're
blank
fine.
in my head. Yeah,
No,
thanks
you're
very
fine.
much for sharing. And George, thank you. I appreciate this. And when you get a copy of that, send it to me because I want Reverend Harris to hear it so he can be on the next meeting. He's a much wiser man than me. So I like to have him in those meetings too, and as we're all
Okay.
planning.
And
if you don't mind.
I just want to check with y'all to see if you're okay for my vision of the next meeting, which is we continue our conversation about how we work together as a team and what we need from each other. We look at the strategy chart for the Black Liberation Committee, focusing on the branches where the allies are and who we know in those branches and how we get started with them. So part of that conversation next time will be about what does the content look like, which to me begs the question, what's our assessment process like too? So that's all that I can imagine for the next time. And then part of the third time, the third time will probably be, okay, here's the assessment or what we're going to take as baseline. And then here's the first 5 hours of content. I don't know. That's
Okay.
I'm going too far because that's like June or July. All right.
No,
Thank
but that
you for
sounds like a
letting me
good
share
start.
stuff. What is it, Ashley?
I said that sounds like a really good start. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you very much, especially Dr. Jean for sharing. And I'm excited to work with you.
Amen.
Woo-hoo. All right.
All right, people.
Thank
Much
you.
love.
Stay wonderful and
All right.
strong. God bless.
Have
God
a
bless
good
you.
time.
night.
All
Bye.
right. Good night,
Bye.
everybody.